Ukraine's civil society leaders are looking to South Africa for support in ending Russia's war. A particular area of focus for the delegation will be on South Africa's support for peace building, including the arbitrary killing of civilians and the illegal deportation of Ukrainian children. A delegation arrived in the country for a series of meetings this week. Let's get some more information. I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Olexiy Haran from the Department of Comparative Politics at the National University of Kyiv Moyla Academy, and Kateryna, Rashevska, legal expert at the Regional Center for Human Rights. Good to have you both, and thank you very much for your time. Kateryna, let me begin with you. We saw President Cyril Ramaphosa leading a delegation of African leaders, and part of what they presented was a 12-point peace plan, which would have included a ceasefire, resumption of peace talks, termination of unilateral sanctions against Russia, and urged for more children, actually, to be returned. What has happened since that time?
I would like to mention that also in this plan there are other important provisions like immediate release of Ukrainian prisoners of war, and also, of course, unconditional and immediate repatriation of Ukrainian children. So when we are talking about these points, with the repatriation of Ukrainian children, there are at least some political will to help us with practical steps as for this repatriation. And as we know, President Ramaphosa discussed it with both President Zelensky and President Putin. And now we would like to organize all this process accordingly to the international humanitarian and human rights law. So to vote the special resolution at the level of the United Nations General Assembly, to appoint third party in order to mediate and to guarantee the process of repatriation, and of course to respect child best interest and the best interest of Ukrainian child to be returned to Ukraine.
And at this particular appointment, what sort of expertise at the legal point of view do you think South Africa will be able to offer as support? Because many people are looking at South Africa saying, well, maybe it's punching a little bit above its weight.
So, first of all, South Africa, like a country with a huge respect to human rights and to child rights, especially, is very important for us, and also as a regional leader, because unfortunately not only children from Ukraine but also from other countries where there is a war were deported, and unfortunately or fortunately, but states of Africa have this expertise and experience how to organize the process of reunification of families and of repatriation. That is why we need to use this experience, and we need to avoid the repetition of faults of errors, but some repetition of positive examples. That is why I guess that South Africa can help us to mobilize the support as for this issue, and also to help us to return each child illegally deported by Russians.
We have almost 19,000 registered cases of Ukrainian children deported to Russia. 19,000. Out of which, how many were returned?
Only 386 Ukrainian children were returned because of significant obstacles put in place by Russians.
I'll come back to that, but Prof, let's bring you in here. I mean, South Africa has up until this point maintained a non-aligned stance, right? There's a government, even though others are saying the close ties that South Africa has with Russia, for example, makes this peace plan that they presented almost not effective. If we were to look at a new system of global governance, what would be some of the key areas that would need to change?
$1 billion question. Look, first of all, I would like to say that Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons. Okay? We had the third nuclear arsenal in the world. We gave it up in exchange for the guarantees of our territorial integrity. And these guarantees were provided by three great powers, including Russia. Russia promised to keep it. And Russia attacked us. Okay? Moreover, the attack happened in 2014. At that time, Ukraine officially was non-bloc country, like you are. Non-bloc, non-alignment. And we were attacked. So it shows us that basically South Africa is in position to understand what's going on. Just imagine that you are in the same situation and you are attacked. So I would say that the founders of non-alignment movements, they actually said that non-alignment doesn't mean neutrality. And we know pretty well how non-alignment movements stood against colonialism and against imperialist aggression. And what we have right now in Ukraine, we have the former colonial empire, which is trying to come back. And they are saying that we do not exist, that Ukrainians do not exist as a separate nation.
Yeah.
That's really, that we are part of a Russian nation.
Yeah.
That's the main problem, you know. So for us, this is kind of existential fight.
Yeah.
It's not about territory.
So the global reforms that you seek, you would say, are reforms that would respect the sovereignty of smaller nations, because it seems it's the smaller nations that are suffering the biggest part of this brunt or this injustice, if you would like.
Correct, correct. And again, as I'm saying, Ukrainian case is, well, the tragedies are always tragedies, we know, in whatever part of the world where they happen. But Ukrainian case is unique because of this situation. We gave up nuclear weapons in exchange for guarantees. And they are brutally violated. That's why this case is so important. So imagine just, you know, you have a nuclear power which is coming to your shore and is saying, now, give up your part of your territory, or give up your resources, otherwise we would attack you.
Yeah.
It's not a right thing.
Why would you come to South Africa, though, I mean, to raise issues like that when the UN is already giving a lot of attention to the situation between the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Yes, that's right. But do you know the position of South Africa in the United Nations? Do you know?
We have very little influence, really.
No, actually, you know, on the resolutions of territorial integrity of Ukraine,
yeah.
South Africa unfortunately abstained.
Yeah.
So basically, why we are coming
Is that non-aligned stance?
No, a lot of non-allied countries supported us. Yeah. More than half of African countries voted for territorial integrity of Ukraine. Again, non-alignment doesn't imply that you do not respect the territorial integrity of other countries. So I think here we face I would say, two problems. So first of all, we need to increase the understanding of what's going on in Ukraine, here in South Africa. We need to remind that you mentioned historical ties with Russia, right? But it wasn't Russia. It was the Soviet Union. Right? Russia and Soviet Union are different things. And it was Ukraine, which for more than a decade was a member of UN Special Committee Against Apartheid, not the Soviet Union, Ukraine. Okay, and we co-sponsored many resolutions against colonialism and apartheid. So this is information which we like to bring to you and explain to you that this is not a proxy war. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for our existence. For us, it's also important to understand your logic. And then we have a discussion, okay? And I think that compared to a visit of a civil society delegation in April, and I was privileged to be part of that, we see a huge development. Okay. So we see the visit of African presidents, and by the way, I think it's very important to mention that while they were in Kiev, Kiev was bombarded by Russians. Yeah. And they had to go to shelter. They knew that African leaders are in, and they bombarded Kiev. Yeah. So this visit was important because it was possibility to see by their own eyes what's going on, to talk directly to Putin and Zelensky. Then there were calls between President Ramaphosa and Zelensky. So something is moving, there is more understanding. Yeah. So I think that's why we need to talk when we have such, serious problems in the whole world and in the international order. We need to talk and to think what we can do together. And again, I think that we have a lot in common. We gave up nuclear weapons. We were non-bloc countries. You won in your non-violence struggle. We also, by the way, got independence non-violently in '91. And now we are under attack. So let's think how we can join forces. There are problems that unite many countries. For example, grain, the issue of grain, the export from Ukraine, nuclear safety, the largest nuclear power station in Europe is situated in Ukraine, and it is occupied by Russia.
Yeah.
It never happened in history of mankind that nuclear power station is occupied by foreign military. Imagine what is the threat for the whole world. And we went through Chernobyl. We do not want it to be repeated.
Kateryna, civil society, human rights bodies in Ukraine worried about Russia using children in particular for their bargaining position, or at least as weapon in this bargaining process. Under international law, what is the call for you that you say must happen here?
So the Russian Federation must comply with its international obligations according to international humanitarian law and international human rights law. That is why the Russian Federation needs to provide at least the ICRC, International Committee of Red Cross, with the full list of children unlawfully deported or forcibly transferred by them. They need to help us to repatriate Ukrainian children, because even according to their information, during these almost 2 years, they have managed to reunify only 34 Ukrainian children with their family members. You know, more than 19,000 were unlawfully deported, and only 34 children, according to their information, were reunified with their biological relatives. What is it? Is this about respect to child's rights? No, this is not about this respect. And also the Russian Federation need to stop to indoctrinate Ukrainian children and to militarize them. They need to stop recruitment of Ukrainian children, because unfortunately we started to document cases where Ukrainian children unlawfully deported to Russia obtained their summons to Russian army, and that is why, yes, they will be returned to Ukraine, however with arms against their proper nation. I guess that this is a very cynical crime of the crimes, when they use our children against Ukrainians. They would like to turn these children into Russians. They finish the process of forcible imposition of the Russian citizenship to our children. And unfortunately, Ukrainian orphans and children deprived of parental care are in a very vulnerable position, because in international law there are no provisions in order to protect this category of children. And that is why the Russian Federation just appropriated Ukrainian orphans, called them Russian citizens, Russians, and now Maria Lvova-Belova, Commissioner for Children's Rights in Russia, repeated many times that there are no Ukrainian children in Russia. There are only Russian children in our country. So they would like to abduct Ukrainian children to finish their process of turning our children to enemies of their proper nation. They would like to make these children Russians. And this is what is directly enshrined into the Genocide Convention. The Article 2 of this convention is about forcible transfer of children from one group to another group. The Russian Federation, unfortunately, is committing now genocide, and international community is like silent.
Kateryna and Prof, much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming on. That's where we leave it for tonight. The professor there, Professor Olexiy Haran from the Department of Comparative Politics at the National University of Kiev in Mohyla Academy. And then Kateryna,